Alright, so today's plan is winterization. I didn't record it, but I already put an entrance reducer in, which stops a lot of the cold wind from coming through. I'll be taking off the bucket. I have something called a bee cozy that'll be slipping on top. And I'm just going to walk you through kind of the process that I like to do for a lot of my bees. So first thing we're going to do is remove that bucket, and then we're going to open up the beehive and remove the apivar strips. They're only supposed to be in there from 6 to 8 weeks, and we're pretty much at that point where we pull them out. And I do something called an oxalic acid dribble. So it's an acid that doesn't harm the bees, but it kills the mites. So again, this is another mite treatment. It's just like a little tiny syringe that I have, and I just sprinkle the bees. And as you can see, I forgot my veil, so smoke is definitely going to be important today. Oh, this is a nice healthy hive. Look at this. This is the oxalic acid I was speaking about. I put 5 milliliters of oxalic acid mix. It's just water, glycerin, and oxalic acid powder. It treats the mites, doesn't hurt the bees, and I apply it 5 milliliters per space between the frames. So and we'll keep the bees warm in the winter. If you've been following along for Plaster Lanes, I really appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you next year. Okay, Ashbury winterization. So the plan is I have a few entrance reducers that I'm going to put in the front. The reason we do that is because during the winter, when the cold wind is blowing, we don't want all that heat to escape. So we put a little entrance reducer on. It'll make it so that there's a very slim area for the bees to get out. They can still get out, it's no big deal, but it's going to allow them to keep a lot of that heat in. And I'm also going to remove these buckets and add what looks like a box, but the box is filled with insulation. This is what the box looks like. It's just 3 pieces of insulation, and it gives the bees 30 R, which is an insulation value, above their head, so it stays really nice and warm and heat won't escape. This is what a bee cozy is. Essentially, like a beer cozy, it will slip onto the hive and keep the hive insulated. This has an R value of about 8, so the sides end up being a little bit less insulated than the top, which is fine because as the bees are breathing, condensation will begin to accumulate on the sides, and then they'll have something to drink when they want water. Here are the entrance reducers. You can see here that there's a smaller area for them to come out of, so I'll just put this in here. So this mite treatment has to stay in the hive for 6 to 8 weeks, and this week it is week 6. So we're going to remove those strips, and this is a nice healthy hive going into the winter. I can see that. Alright, I got my nice long pliers here. There we go. 1 strip. Oxalic acid will burn the mites, but it is totally harmless to the bees. So we add 5 cc's to every space that is between the bars that you see here. So we'll go ahead and apply that now. So here we are. There we go. Box with insulation on it. So this is what's going to allow the R30 up top. So you're supposed to add 5 milliliters per space between frames that has bees. So I'm just going to do exactly that, and we'll see if we even get through the whole thing. Like I said, there's not as many bees, so this stuff is just going to go back to the jug.
I just want to say thank you to everybody that was watching. I really hope that you could join me for next season, and I will be very excited to come back in April to see how the bees fared during the winter. Thank you very much.
Okay, the winterization process for Candarel. We're going to put entrance reducers in the front, and that's going to shrink the space that the bees could get into. The reason we do that, we don't want that cold wind rushing in there and taking away all the heat the bees are generating during the winter. So we reduce the entrance so that it's a smaller space. But the bees can come out if they need to. The other thing is we're going to be removing the apivar strips, so I'll be using a long set of pliers for that. I'll just go in there, grab them, pull them out, and then I apply something called oxalic acid. It's a dribble that I made. It's harmless to the bees, but it irritates and causes the mites to die on the bees themselves. So that's a small little application that I do with a syringe. You'll see that later. And then I top it off with some insulation on the top to make sure that the top of the hive does not lose all that heat, because heat rises, so we want to keep that heat for the bees. All right, let's get going. There we go. 1, 2. Put a little bit of smoke at the front. It's super wispy. It's not a thick smoke right now, so I know it might look like nothing, but there's something there, trust me. Wow, nice. Very nice. I love the amount of bees in here. This is the oxalic acid I was speaking of. It's just in a syringe. There's 50 milliliters in here. And I apply 5 milliliters per space where there are bees. So if it touches the wood, it gets pretty much neutralized and it's useless. So I have to be pretty accurate with this. Usually wherever the bees are at this time of the year, that's where brood is. So the brood's probably all on this side over here, not too much in the middle. And that's really all that I'm going to use on this hive. So right here is the insulation that I was speaking of. I hide it in this box so that it looks a little bit nicer. But you might notice that there's like a hole here. This is normally the upper entrance during the summer, but if I push the insulation down, it covers it, so it doesn't really do anything. The last step is to put the bee cozy on. So that's what this is. So this cozy acts very much like a beer cozy, and it keeps the bees insulated during the winter. So we'll slip this on. I'll show you what it looks like. And this is now what it looks like. So the bee cozy wraps around it. It stops a lot of the wind from hitting. It's also black, so it attracts more heat, or hold more heat. So that's pretty much it. I'm just gonna wrap this up with the strap and then move on to the next one. Let's see how this hive looks. Hive looks good too. Feel pretty confident going into the winter with this. So let's remove the apivar. There we go. There's the last one. And now we treat with a little bit of oxalic. This on. Push this down. The hives are ready for the winter. They got their bee cozies on, they're insulated, they're fed, they're treated, and I'll be back in April. So if you've been following along, really appreciate it, and I hope to see you again in the spring. Okay, Carlingwood. So to winterize your beehive, I have to reduce the entrance, which I have a little piece of wood that I put here. Reducing the entrance will reduce the amount of heat that escapes during the winter and the cold that will come into the hive from the wind. So reducing the entrance allows the bees to thermoregulate a little bit better. I'm going to remove the apivar strips that I put in last time I was in here. The apivar strips are used to control mites in the hive. There are always mites in the hive, so we treat the bees in order for the mite level to go down. And the lower it is, the better for the bees. The higher it is, the greater chances that the bees are actually going to die over the winter because of the mite load. Once I remove those strips, I treat the bees with something called oxalic acid. It's just water, glycerin, and a powder of oxalic acid. It's not like eat through the floor strong, like it touches my skin, it doesn't bother me, but the mites are very sensitive to it. So by using this solution, the mites die, but the bees are totally fine. And then lastly, we're going to wrap the beehive for the winter and get it ready for the long few months ahead until April when I come back. First things first, we're going to put this entrance reducer in. I know it's a little difficult to see, but you can see that there's an opening here. And there's a small opening on this side, but I'm not too worried. This is going to allow the bees to come in and out without a problem, but also reduce that breeze. Smoke the entrance just a little bit. Wow. Okay, wow. All right. Okay, that's pretty good. Bees are very chill today. Thankfully, I chose a nice sunny day to do this. First strip, right here. All right. So I put 5 milliliters of this oxalic solution in between the bars. Now we start the winterization process. What this box does is it gives them an R value of 30. And that's going to allow the bees to generate heat and not have it lost up top here. We don't want the bees to generate all this heat and then have it escape because the wood or the top is not insulated well. So now that this is on, and I know that there is I don't know if you can see it, there is a small little entrance here, but I push the insulation down so that it doesn't cause any issues. Now the reason we keep the R value lower on the sides than the top is because we actually want a little bit of condensation on the sides of the hive, because the bees will get thirsty and they are breathing, they're awake during the whole winter. So the bees are going to be breathing out and causing condensation. And when it's nice enough outside, the bees will break cluster, so they'll stop shivering, and they'll be thirsty, so they'll want to eat, which they'll have syrup filled in cells, which is what we gave them, and water, which will accumulate on the sides from them breathing. I know it looks kind of weird, it looks a little bit of a mess, but there's insulation in this box. This box is empty so that people can see it a little bit better. This Bee Cozy is going to allow the bees to retain more of that heat, and the entrance reducer, which is down below. So it's all about how much heat we could control from escaping the beehive. Now, if you've been watching since the beginning, I really appreciate the views, and I really hope that you could see me next year. I'll be back in April to open up the hive, make sure everybody's good, maybe give them a little bit of food. But until then, enjoy the winter, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Hello. So today, we are winterizing the beehive. This is a queen excluder. This is a entrance reducer. So we just put it in the entrance. And there we go. So with the entrance reduced, it stops the heat from escaping and it stops the cold wind from sliding into the hive during the winter. So the plan is that we're going to remove some apivar strips. We're going to treat them with an oxalic solution, oxalic acid. It's a pretty mild solution. I apply it with a syringe. The bees aren't bothered by it, but it kills the mites. And then once that happens, I put a layer of insulation on the top and a bee cozy, so a little bit of insulation around the beehive, and that'll be it. So let's get going. Ah, that looks great. So let us remove the apivar. And we treat it with some oxalic acid. So like I said, it's very mild, and we'll put 5 milliliters between each bee space between the frames. Put this on. All right, so this is it. This is what the hive is going to look like. It's got insulation on the top, insulation on the sides, and I won't be back until April, so you've been following along. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you again. Thank you so much.